Hi, I'm Alice. I live in New York with my husband Roger. We have 2 kids. Our older daughter, Clara, is a lawyer, and our younger one is in college. I work as a teacher, and Roger has big dreams of starting his own business. He believes it will make good money, but he doesn't have enough to get started, so he does small jobs to save up. I don't mind because my job brings in a steady income, and I handle the household expenses without any trouble. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting in the living room. "The weather is nice today," Roger said. "Yes, it is. I'm excited to see Clara. She's been away for so long," I replied. "Me too. I've missed her." "How is your business idea going, dear?" I asked. "It's going well. I found an investor and things are looking promising," Roger said. "Oh, that's great. I wish I could help you more with money," I said. "It's okay. Your income keeps the household running. Don't worry about it. I know you're doing your best, and I appreciate everything you do," Roger reassured me. "That's not what I meant, dear. I'm proud of your ambition and I believe in your dreams. I just want us to succeed together," I said. Before I could say more, Clara's voice interrupted us. "Mom, Dad, I'm back. Welcome home, Clara. We missed you so much," we both said. "I missed you both too. It's great to be back," Clara replied. Clara had just finished her law training. She's a sincere and kind girl. The next few days were full of joy and laughter. "Hey Mom, shall we go on a family trip? I'm starting work next month, and I want to spend time with you all before that," Clara suggested. She was right. We hadn't been on a family trip in years. I decided to fulfill her wish. "Oh sure, dear. It's been so long since we spent quality time together, and now that you're here, you don't have to worry about the expenses," I said. "Mom, I'll contribute too," Clara offered. I felt so proud of my daughter. We've raised our kids well, but I had some savings and wanted to pay for the trip myself. "Oh, it's okay. I have some savings and a credit card. We'll still have a good time," I said. "Great, Mom. I'll plan the whole trip," Clara said excitedly. The next day, Clara came to me. "Hey Mom, I need your credit card to book the flight." "Here you go," I said, handing her the card. "Thank you, Mom. I'll be back in a while," she said and went to book the tickets. But after a few minutes, she came out of her room looking worried. "Mom," Clara called. "Yes, dear?" "I can't book the tickets. It says your card has been blocked. I booked the tickets with my card, but I'm wondering what happened to yours." "What? How is that possible?" I asked, surprised. I checked, and it turned out that a big monthly payment was pending. "What? I didn't take any loan recently, and all the previous dues have been paid off," I said, confused. "Then it might be a mistake by the bank. I'll call them and check," Clara said. I started to worry. I've always been careful about money and paid all my dues on time. I hoped it was just a mistake, but I tried to stay calm. Clara was on a call with the bank manager for a long time. I waited anxiously for her to finish. "Hey, is everything okay?" "What did they say?" I asked when she finally came out. "Mom, they told me you took a big loan this year and haven't paid any installments. That's why your card has been blocked. We can't use it until you pay the due amount," Clara explained. "What? I didn't take any loans. Are you sure, Mom? Maybe you don't remember. The amount is huge. How much is it?" $75,000, Clara replied. "What? How could I forget such a large amount? I've never taken on a debt this big." "It's okay, Mom. They said they would email the documents. We'll see what we can do," Clara said, trying to calm me down. "Oh God, what is this new problem?" "Don't worry, Mom. Where's Dad?" "I'll let him know. He went on a business trip for a week. It's an important meeting with a new investor," I said. "No worries. I'll handle it," Clara reassured me. But I was still really worried about the loan situation. I tried really hard to remember the details, but I couldn't recall anything. I've always been careful with my money since I've had to manage everything on my own, and the idea of taking out a big loan scares me. I even wondered if this could be a scam, which made me feel really uneasy. While on the business trip, Thomas and Roger had a serious conversation about money. "I don't understand why your wife didn't invest in your business all these years if she wanted to support you. And why did she transfer money to my account instead of doing it directly?" Thomas asked. "Honestly, I don't know the reasons behind her actions," Roger replied. "Are you sure about that? I heard she's a teacher, so how did she suddenly come up with such a large amount of money? It's better if you don't say a word to her, or you'll have to deal with the consequences, Thomas said. Roger then showed some photos to Thomas, who got scared and stayed quiet. That's not the main issue right now. Let's focus on my business idea. Did you like it? Roger asked. I have to admit, your idea is very interesting, but I want to remind you that there's always a risk in any business venture. Have you thought about the potential risks and challenges? Thomas asked. I understand there are risks, but I firmly believe in the success of my idea, Roger replied. It's good to have confidence, but you should be prepared. A well-thought-out plan and risk management are crucial for any business to succeed, Thomas advised. Thank you, Thomas. Let's go to the meeting now, Roger said. Roger nailed the meeting with his convincing skills and got the deal. They made a huge profit. Back at home, Clara came out after analyzing the details sent by the bank. Mom, the bank has emailed your details. It looks like the person who took the loan used all your documents. The loan is in your name, and your signature is on the papers too, Clara explained. Signature? I never signed any such document. You know me, Clara. I always read everything before signing, I said, shocked. I know, Mom. It's a fraud, and I'll find out who did this to you. But first, we need to file a police report, Clara said. What about my blocked cards and the payments due on this debt? I asked, worried. It's okay, Mom. I spoke with the bank manager. He said he'd report the fraud and could pause the payments until the culprit is found, Clara reassured me. I don't know how this happened. I feel terrible. You just wanted a trip, and I couldn't even give you that, I said, feeling guilty. It's okay, Mom. I promise I'll find out who did this before our trip, Clara said determinedly. I felt proud of my daughter at that moment, but I was also worried that she might get into trouble. I didn't want to discourage her, so I decided to support her fully. First, give me the documents, Mom. I'll go to the bank and verify them, Clara said. I handed her the documents. When Clara came back, she said the documents were real, but the signature wasn't mine. Someone had copied my signature and taken out a loan in my name. It must be someone close, Mom. Someone who has access to your documents and has seen your signature. Do you suspect anyone? Clara asked. I don't know, dear. My documents are always kept safe in our bedroom, and I never gave the key to anyone. My signature is something only my colleagues at school and family know, but none of them would do this, I replied. Where do you keep the keys, Mom? Clara asked. In my bedroom. Only your dad and I know where they are, I said. Could it be Dad, Roger? Clara asked hesitantly. No, what are you saying? He's your dad, I exclaimed. I know. But everything is pointing to him. Did you know, Mom? Dad can mimic your signature, Clara said. I used to take your signature on my report card so you wouldn't scold me for my low grades. What? I said it shocked. Yes, Dad can mimic your signature exactly, Clara admitted. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. But we still can't be sure of anything, Mom. The loan money was transferred to someone else's account. Do you know anyone named Thomas? Clara asked. You mean Thomas Jones? Yes, I've seen that name on your dad's phone. Maybe he's one of his friends. What's going on here? I need to talk to Roger, I said, feeling a wave of confusion. Yes, we should clarify this. He might have an explanation, Clara agreed. I called Roger, but he was unreachable. I couldn't believe he might have done this to me. If there was an emergency, he should have told me. My mind was full of questions, and I couldn't think straight. Mom, I think we should wait until Dad comes back, Clara suggested. Okay, I said, though the next 2 days were incredibly hard. Roger's phone remained unreachable, and I couldn't stop worrying. I was anxiously waiting for him to return home. Finally, on the day he was supposed to come back, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was him, I rushed to open the door, but it was just a courier. Disappointed, I signed the receipt and brought the package inside. What is it, Mom? Clara asked. I don't know, maybe some school documents. I'll check later, I replied. Shall I open it? Clara offered. Yes, go ahead, I said. As soon as Clara opened the package, it fell from her hands, and she looked shocked. Mom, she exclaimed. Seeing her panic, I got scared too and rushed over. She was pointing at the envelope on the floor. I picked it up, opened it, and saw some photos. The moment I saw them, my head started spinning. I sat down and looked at them again. The photos showed me hugging my friend Jackson, who works with me at school. There were also photos of us sitting in a cafe, feeding each other and even kissing. I couldn't believe it. I had never done such a thing. I'd always loved Roger. How was this possible? Clara, this isn't possible. I mean, the face and hair are mine, but I've never done this. Jackson has a family, and I would never cheat on your dad, I said, desperately trying to make sense of it. I know, Mom. It's hard for me to believe too, but the love letters in there are in your handwriting. It doesn't seem right, Clara said, confused. Just then, Roger arrived home. Dad, Clara said, greeting him. Why do you look so? By the way, I've got great news. We made a tremendous profit on this deal, Roger announced, not noticing the tension in the room. Oh, why is it so hot in here? What's going on? What's in your hand, Alice? Before I could stop him, Roger took the envelope from me. He opened it and stared at the photos. What is this? Who is this man, Alice? Answer me. Roger demanded angrily. It's my colleague, Jackson, I explained, trembling. Oh, wow. Is this what you do at school? Roger shouted. Dad, at least listen to her. The photos are edited. Don't you trust Mom? You know how much she loves you, Clara pleaded. No, she doesn't love me. That's why she's so calm and hasn't asked you about the $75,000 debt I took in her name, Roger retorted. What? You took out that loan? I asked in shock. Oh, so you found out, Alice? Well, since we're on the subject, listen to this. I want a divorce. You've cheated on me, and I'm going to file a case against you in court, Roger declared. Stop it, Dad. I never thought I'd have to say this to you, but I have no other choice. Mom never cheated on you. You've created these fake proofs to sabotage her. Clara shouted, standing up to her father. Oh, I never thought you'd become this smart. You figured it out, but you don't have any proof. Listen carefully. If you still want to call me Dad, you'll do what I say, Roger threatened. No, Dad. I became a lawyer to fight for the truth and punish liars. I'm going to fight for Mom, Clara replied, determined. Roger couldn't believe what Clara was saying. He stared at her angrily. You're just a kid. You don't have any proof. If you want to fight for your mom, then get out of this house now, Roger shouted. Okay, Dad, I'll leave, but you'll realize your mistakes soon. Come on, Mom, let's go to my place, Clara said. I couldn't believe this was my husband, the man I had loved all my life. How could he do this to me? And most importantly, why? I had always supported him, and now he was repaying me like this. I couldn't handle the trauma. Clara took me to her home. Mom, rest for a while. Don't think too much. I'll make everything right, Clara said. I closed my eyes, and memories of Roger and me falling in love, getting married, raising our kids, and our life together flashed before my eyes. How could he forget everything? Why would he do this to me? I fell asleep, exhausted and heartbroken. Meanwhile, Clara was working on the case. She had learned in law school to always stand up for the truth, no matter what. She was determined to uncover the truth. Clara emailed the photos to her friend, who was an editor, to confirm that they were edited. Then she started investigating Thomas Jones. Clara got his contact details from the bank and called him. Hello, Thomas? Hello, who is this? Thomas answered. I'm Clara, Roger's daughter, the one in whose business you've invested money. Clara introduced herself. I don't know any Roger, Thomas said, sounding confused. Stop lying. I have all the proof of your emails and chats. This call is being recorded, so you better tell the truth, Clara warned. Thomas sighed. Roger is blackmailing me, Clara. I'm sorry. He said he would ruin my marriage if I didn't cooperate. You don't have to worry. He can't do anything. But if you don't speak the truth, I'll have to file a complaint against you as well, Clara replied firmly. No, please don't. I'm sorry, I'll cooperate. What do you want to know? Thomas asked, his voice shaky. How much did you invest in my dad's business? Clara questioned. Clara, I didn't invest anything. Your mom did, Thomas confessed. Mom, do you know this? Clara asked, turning to me. Yes, Alice, right? You transferred $75,000 to me and told me to invest in Roger's business, Thomas said. What? When? I exclaimed, shocked. Clara, I have no idea what he's talking about. I never transferred money to him or texted him. It's okay, Mom. I think I've got an idea, Clara reassured me. She then told Thomas, okay, thank you for cooperating. This is enough information. We realized Roger had deceived everyone. Clara then decided to check with Jackson. She knew him well and trusted that he wouldn't do anything wrong, but she needed proof. Clara went to Jackson's house and explained everything. Jackson was shocked when he saw the photos. In reality, the photos were of Jackson and his wife. Roger had edited my face in place of Jackson's wife. Clara collected the original photos from Jackson as evidence. A few days later, another courier arrived. "Mom, here's another package for you," Clara said. "Oh God, what now?" I muttered, feeling exhausted. "Relax, Mom. Just open it," Clara encouraged me. I opened the package and was shocked once again. It was divorce papers. Roger had sent me divorce papers, accusing me of cheating on him. "What? This is too much now, Mom. You need to fight this," Clara insisted. "Dear, he doesn't love me anymore. Maybe it's better if we get separated. But I won't accept these false accusations. We'll go to court and prove him wrong," I decided. Clara was right, there was no love left, but I had to protect my self-respect. So we appealed to the court. On the day of the trial, Clara and I went to the family court. Roger stood in front of me, and I looked into his eyes, seeing no feelings for me. How could a person change so suddenly? What did I do wrong in our marriage? The trial started, and Roger accused me of cheating on him with Jackson and demanded a divorce. Clara spoke confidently, "Your Honor, the accusations against my client are baseless. We have evidence to prove this. The photos in question were manipulated, and here are the original photos." Clara's editor friend had confirmed the photos were edited, and Clara presented the original ones as evidence. She also explained how the photos had been altered. "The evidence we provided shows that my client did not cheat. These accusations are false," Clara argued. The judge reviewed the evidence and then asked me about the divorce. "Your Honor, I do want a divorce. My husband's false accusations and actions have destroyed our relationship. There's no love left between us," I said, holding back tears. "But there's also a serious matter. Roger took a substantial debt in my name by forging my signature and committing fraud with the bank. This needs to be addressed." Clara presented the examination of the signature, which turned out to be fake. Thomas also testified, explaining how Roger had blackmailed him. "Mr. Roger, do you have any explanation for these actions?" the judge asked. Roger sighed. "I admit I made false accusations against my wife, and I did take out a loan in her name. I was desperate and needed financial support for my business, but she didn't support me. So I wanted to separate from her." "If you wanted a divorce, why make false accusations?" the judge pressed. "Because I didn't want her to be a part of my success. I didn't want to pay alimony after the divorce," Roger confessed. Hearing Roger's words, I felt a mix of sadness and disbelief. I had supported him all these years, even if not financially, and this was how he repaid me. "Your Honor, my client seeks justice. We request appropriate measures to address the financial deception and false accusations," Clara stated. The judge acknowledged the harm Roger had caused and made his final decision. Roger and I were granted a divorce, and he was ordered to pay a substantial compensation. I was proud of Clara for standing by me, though I couldn't help feeling hurt by my husband's actions. However, I found comfort in knowing that I had protected my self-esteem. After a week, I started to heal from the emotional trauma. Clara and I decided to go on the trip we had planned, seeking much-needed time together and a fresh start.
Everyone was really excited as my daughter Marissa's wedding rehearsal dinner got going. I felt proud watching her and her fiancé Kevin, surrounded by our family and friends, getting lots of good wishes. But then something unexpected happened. Marissa spoke up, asking for everyone's attention. The room went quiet. My husband Ron and I looked at each other, confused. Marissa raised her glass. "I want to talk about something important," she said, looking right at me. "Elise, you might think of yourself as my stepmother, but to me, you're just someone I don't want in my life." The guests were shocked, and Ron looked really pale. I felt like I'd been hit hard, like all the air had been knocked out of me by what Marissa said. "What's going on, Marissa?" Ron asked, sounding shaky and shocked. "Don't act like you don't know, Dad," Marissa said with a sneer. "You know that Elise has been trying to become a part of our family since the beginning. Well, I'm done pretending she's not my mom because she never will be." Her words felt like a sharp knife stabbing into me. I looked at Marissa, hoping to see the loving girl I once knew, but all I saw was hatred. "Marissa, please, let's not do this now," I begged, my voice shaking with emotion. "Why not?" she snapped back. "This is my day, and I'll say whatever I want." Ron clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "That's enough," he said firmly. "We're leaving." Marissa just smirked and turned away, leaving me to face the stares and whispers from the guests. As we walked out, I could feel their judgmental eyes on me, wondering what I'd done to make my own stepdaughter hate me so much. Tears streamed down my face, and I realized everything had changed. In the car, Ron held the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, his face filled with anger and sadness. "I don't understand what's wrong with her, Elise," he said, his voice strained. "But I won't let her hurt you like this." I just nodded, feeling overwhelmed as we drove away from what should have been a happy night, now ruined. I wondered what had happened to the sweet girl Marissa used to be and what this meant for our family. It's hard to say when Marissa started hating me. Maybe it was when I married her dad and became her stepmom. Or maybe it started even earlier, influenced by her mom, Clara. "Don't worry, honey," Clara had told Marissa, running her fingers through her hair. "No one can take your real mom's place." Even then, Clara's words made me feel uneasy, but I tried to ignore it. I wanted to build a good relationship with Marissa, my new stepdaughter. "I'm not here to take anyone's place," I told Marissa gently. "I just want us to be friends." She nodded, but her eyes showed no warmth or love. It felt like there was a barrier between us, fueled by her mom's hurtful words. At first, Marissa was polite, but distant. But as time went on, her true feelings came out. "Why are you always trying to get involved in my life?" she snapped one evening when I asked about her weekend plans. Ron gave Marissa a disapproving look. "Marissa, don't talk to your mom like that." "She's not my mom," Marissa yelled, her face full of anger. "And I'm tired of her pretending she is." Then she stormed off, leaving me hurt by her harsh words. Ron could only shake his head, looking disappointed and resigned. After that, Marissa's dislike for me was obvious. She'd roll her eyes when I came into a room and make mean comments quietly. If I offered help, she'd reject it rudely, like she couldn't stand being around me. "You're not fooling anyone with your fake kindness," she sneered one day when I asked if she wanted a ride to her friend's house. "Marissa, stop it," Ron said, getting frustrated. But she didn't listen. It was clear Clara encouraged Marissa's hatred toward me. Whenever we saw her, she'd smile sweetly, like she was happy we didn't get along. "I don't know what you've done to make my daughter hate you," she'd say with a fake smile, her eyes filled with mean intentions. "But I guess you'll have to deal with the consequences." And deal with them I did. Marissa's hatred kept growing, like a wound that wouldn't heal, making our family life miserable every day. But I didn't realize then that her hurtful behavior was just the beginning of something much worse. Marissa became even more manipulative and mean after she quit college. Without a plan for her future, she seemed determined to cause trouble in our lives, using her anger to get money and create chaos in our family. "Give me $5,000, or I'll tell everyone how terrible you've been as a stepmom," she said one day, trapping me in the kitchen. I was shocked. "Marissa, why are you saying this? I've tried my best to be good to you." "Forget it," she snapped. "Just give me the money, and I'll leave you alone." I felt desperate as I realized how low she was willing to go. "I don't have that much money right now." "Then you better find it, unless you want everyone to know how bad you are." After that, it happened often. Marissa kept asking for more money, and her threats got worse each time I said no. Ron was stuck in the middle, trying to make both of us happy and wondering why his daughter was acting like this. "Please just give her what she wants," he pleaded with me one night after another big fight. "I can't handle all this arguing." But I knew that giving in would only make things worse. So even as Marissa's threats got scarier, I stuck to my decision. "You think you're so perfect with your job at the high school," she sneered. "Just wait until everyone sees who you really are." Her words scared me. I could only imagine the terrible lies she might spread, ruining my reputation with my coworkers and the students I cared for. Through everything, Clara was always there, silently supporting her daughter's mean actions. "You get what you give, Elise," she'd say when she visited, making me feel even worse. "Maybe if you were a better stepmom, Marissa wouldn't act like this." Her words hurt so much, making me feel angry, betrayed, and lost. But in the middle of all this chaos, I started to feel determined. I couldn't just sit back and let Marissa and Clara keep hurting us. If Marissa wanted a fight, she'd get one. It was time to stand up for myself and my family. I needed to show everyone the truth about Marissa's cruelty, even if it meant doing things I never thought I could do. From then on, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep my family safe, even if it meant doing things I never thought I'd have to do. As Marissa's wedding day got closer, she kept asking for more and treating me worse. It felt like she enjoyed making me suffer, testing how much I could take before I broke down. "I need $3,000 more for my dress alterations," she said one evening, not even saying hello as she came into the living room. Ron looked at me, begging me to give in, but I couldn't take it anymore. "No, Marissa, I've had enough." She acted surprised. "What are you going to do, Elise? Cry to Daddy like you always do." I clenched my fists, feeling furious. "You ungrateful child. Your dad and I have done everything for you, and this is how you treat us." Marissa laughed, making me even angrier. "You're not fooling anyone. You're just a sad, insecure woman trying to buy your way into our family." Her words hurt, but before I could say anything, she said one more thing. "You think the school wants someone like you?" Marissa said, her voice dripping with malice. "Just wait until they find out about your drinking problem." I felt sick to my stomach. Marissa was planning to ruin my career and reputation with lies. "Marissa, stop it," Ron yelled, furious, but she just smirked, enjoying the mess she'd made. In that moment, something changed in me. I felt determined to stay strong against all the hurt and anger. "I'm done being a victim," I said, my voice firm and steady. "Leave and don't come back until you can act like a decent person." Marissa looked surprised by my defiance at first, but then she smirked and leaned in close. "You'll regret this," she whispered, her breath hot on my face. With those words, she stormed out, leaving a tense silence behind her. Ron looked at me, seeming lost. "I'm sorry, Elise. I don't know what's wrong with her," he said, rubbing his temples. But I knew this wasn't sudden. It was years of Clara's influence. As I thought about Marissa's threats, I felt determined. She thought she could ruin my life with lies, but she was wrong. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, and I wouldn't play by her rules. Marissa's threats kept replaying in my head, making me more determined to expose her true self before it was too late. I knew I couldn't rely on Ron for help. His love for his daughter made him blind to her cruelty. So I had to handle this on my own. That's when Derek came into the picture. He used to be Marissa's boyfriend before she changed. We ran into each other at the grocery store, and we started talking. Soon, everything started to make sense. "She's not who you think she is," Derek told me, looking regretful. "She lied to me about you and Ron." I felt really scared when he told me about all the bad things Marissa did. He said Marissa made up stories about me, saying I was trying to control their family and that Ron was mean to them. He believed her because she seemed so sure and angry. But he only realized she was lying after we broke up. As he talked, I started to see how sneaky Marissa really was. She made up lots of lies to make everyone think badly of me. Her mom, Clara, was the one behind it all. Like she was controlling everything behind the scenes. Derek told me that Marissa's mom has been poisoning Marissa's thoughts about you from the very beginning. I realized, feeling sick to my stomach. "She's been putting all these twisted ideas in her head, like you were trying to replace her mom." Everything suddenly made sense. I had been the target of their mean plan all along, made out to be the bad person in their story. But Derek didn't stop there. He said Marissa's getting married for the wrong reasons. Not because she loves Kevin, but because she wants his money and status. "Marissa doesn't really care about Kevin," Derek said with a laugh. "She's just using him to get what she wants. Once she's got what she needs, she'll leave him and find someone else to use." His words shook me to my core. I had always had a feeling that Marissa didn't truly care, but hearing it so plainly was hard to take. After Derek left, my head was spinning with everything he'd said. I'd been letting Marissa and her mom control everything for too long. But now, armed with the truth, I knew I had to do something. It was time to stand up to them, to show everyone what was really going on. No more pretending to be the victim, no more being scared of their lies. I was ready to fight back. On the day of Marissa's wedding, the air was tense as I watched her get ready. But I was determined. This was the day I would reveal the truth. "You look so pretty, my dear," Clara said sweetly, fixing Marissa's veil with a smile. Just like a princess on her big day. Marissa glowed with happiness, soaking up her mother's praise like a flower soaking up sunlight. But it made me feel uneasy. Yes, it's like a fairy tale, I remarked, unable to hold back, with a handsome prince and a mean stepmother. Clara's eyes narrowed, but Marissa just laughed, not seeming to understand or care about what I meant. Speaking of mean stepmothers, she said calmly, I'm surprised you came at all. After how you've been treating me, I thought you might skip the whole thing. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, believe me, I thought about it, but I couldn't miss this moment. Before Marissa could say anything, Ron popped his head into the room with a forced smile. Everything okay here? He asked. Just fine, Dad, Marissa replied sweetly. Elias and I were just chatting. Her tone dripped with sarcasm, but Ron ignored it. Well, it's almost time. You ready? Marissa nodded eagerly, ready to make her entrance. As the music started and the doors opened, I took a deep breath, getting ready for what I had to do. The ceremony went by quickly, with vows that felt empty and fake. But when it came time for Kevin and Marissa to kiss, I knew I had to speak up. Wait, I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet chapel. This wedding can't happen. Everyone gasped and looked at me. Marissa's face turned red with anger, her fists clenched. What's going on? She spat, furious. I took a deep breath and stared at Marissa firmly. Marissa, what this means is that I can't stay quiet anymore while you keep lying and manipulating everyone around you. Clara looked pale, realizing what was happening, but I continued before she could interrupt. I showed them all the proof Derek had given me, texts, emails, recordings, that showed Marissa's lies. For years, you've been spreading lies and turning people against me, pretending to be the innocent one, I said firmly. But not anymore. It's time for the truth. I showed everyone the evidence, explaining how Marissa had been deceitful and selfish. The chapel fell silent. Marissa's calm facade cracked, and she looked furious and shocked. You're lying, she yelled, reaching out towards me. How dare you ruin my special day? But it was too late. The truth was out for everyone to see. As Kevin's family reacted with shock and dismay, it was clear that Marissa's deceit was unraveling before everyone's eyes. She stood exposed, no longer able to maintain her facade. Despite her past actions, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and satisfaction seeing her downfall. The truth had been revealed, and I had won not through trickery, but by exposing the darkness hidden beneath Marissa's lies. The aftermath was chaotic, like a bomb had gone off in the room. The silence was quickly replaced by shouts and gasps as people reacted to the truth. How could you, Marissa? Someone yelled, their anger palpable. This was supposed to be my special day. Your special day was built on lies, I retorted firmly. You can't deceive people forever. Marissa looked ready to argue, but Kevin stepped forward, his eyes filled with hurt and disbelief. Is it true? He asked, his voice trembling. Were you just using me? For a moment, there was silence as everyone waited for Marissa's response. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Almost, but then she put on that fake smile and I saw the cold, calculating look in her eyes. No, of course not, darling, she said, reaching out to touch Kevin's face. You know I love you so much. Elias is just trying to cause trouble like she always does. I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. Didn't she realize that her lies were exposed? Apparently not, as she turned her angry gaze back to me. This is all your fault, she snapped, pointing accusingly at me. If you hadn't interfered, none of this would be happening. Stop, Ron's voice boomed, cutting through the tension. We all turned to see him, his face red with anger and embarrassment. I can't believe what I'm hearing, he said, shaking his head. My own daughter lying and manipulating everyone for her own selfish reasons. Marissa was silent, unable to respond. For once, she seemed speechless in the face of her father's disappointment. I don't even recognize you anymore, Ron said, his voice heavy with sadness. The girl I raised, the one who was kind and loving. She's gone, isn't she? A heavy silence filled the room as we all absorbed the weight of Ron's words. It wasn't just Marissa who felt the impact, but Clara too. They exchanged a tense look, a silent struggle passing between them. Finally, Clara broke the silence. Well? She demanded, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Aren't you going to speak up, defend yourself? But Marissa stayed silent, defeated. She looked smaller than ever, a mere shadow of the manipulative person she had become. Clara snorted in disgust, then stormed out, leaving a shocked silence behind her. Kevin's family followed, their faces showing everything from pity to disgust. And just like that, it was all over. Marissa's big plan had fallen apart, leaving her dreams shattered. As Kevin left, looking devastated, I felt sorry for him. He was just another victim of Marissa's games, but any sympathy I had was quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, and Marissa had brought it all on herself. There would be no more lies or manipulation, only the consequences of her actions. In the days after the failed wedding, chaos erupted as news of Marissa's lies spread rapidly. She found herself shunned by the very community she'd once hoped to impress. I'll never forget the sight of her at her mother's door, begging for help after her plans fell apart. "Please, Mom," she cried, tears in her eyes. "I need your help. I have nowhere else to go." But Clara looked at her with a mix of disgust and pity. "Help you?" she scoffed. "After what you've done? After embarrassing our family?" Marissa flinched as if she had been slapped. But you're my mom. You're supposed to support me, no matter what." "Support you?" Clara shook her head sadly. "You don't understand, do you? There's no support left. You've pushed away everyone who cared about you with your selfishness and lies." Her words hit Marissa hard, like a punch to the gut. I could see the realization dawn on her face, the weight of her loneliness settling in. You don't mean that," Marissa whispered, her hand shaking as she reached out. But Clara stepped away, her face now cold and distant. "I don't recognize you anymore," she said firmly. "The daughter I knew wouldn't have done what you did. You made your choices, Marissa. Now you have to face the consequences." With those final words, Clara turned and walked back inside, leaving Marissa alone on the doorstep, utterly broken. In the weeks that followed, I saw Marissa's once proud demeanor crumble under the weight of her own actions. The places she used to frequent, fancy bars and high-end stores, now treated her with scorn, whispers following her wherever she went. Even her friends deserted her, not wanting to be linked with her disgrace. Through it all, Ron and I stayed strong, our bond growing stronger as Marissa's world fell apart. "I'm sorry it had to end like this," Ron said quietly one evening as we watched Marissa walk by, looking defeated. "But you were right. She did this to herself." I didn't say anything, just squeezed his hand gently. Words felt insufficient in the face of such a painful situation. As things settled down and our community began to recover from Marissa's lies, Ron and I received an outpouring of support and gratitude. The families we had helped, the students I had taught, they all came together to thank us for standing up against the manipulation and lies that had threatened to tear us apart. In those moments of connection, witnessing human kindness and resilience, I found a newfound peace and purpose that I had been missing during Marissa's tumultuous reign. She tried to tear me down, but it was her own selfishness that led to her downfall, revealing the emptiness beneath her facade. Ron and I would move forward, stronger from the experience. If our story could encourage others to stand against manipulation and embrace honesty, then perhaps something positive could come from Marissa's downfall. I thought Mom had lots of money saved, but turns out she didn't. "I told you, right? I think we should make her leave. Why keep someone who doesn't have a job here? I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my money. They treated me like I was just here to clean up after them. I got tired of it all, so I left quietly. Then my son called me, sounding really worried. 'Mom, what's happening?' Tommy asked urgently on the phone. Right around that time, something I did became big news all over the United States. My name is Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. I lived in France for a while, but then I got sick and had to come back to the United States. My old apartment was gone, so I asked my son Tommy and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Tommy is my only son, and he's 44 years old, working in an office. He and his wife Alice don't have any kids, and they seem to live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tommy seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a bit. Tommy reluctantly said yes. It felt awkward to ask, but the joy of being with my family again made me brave. Feeling a bit nervous but mostly happy, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I got there, Tony and Alice greeted me at the door. Tommy seemed glad to see me, but Alice didn't look happy at all. I'm planning to stay here for a few months. My stuff will arrive later, I told them. I left my small bag and went to the living room. We talked about our lives, jobs, and my time in France. When Tommy asked why I moved to France, I just said, I'm getting old and wanted to enjoy living in the countryside there. Tommy chuckled, but Alice still seemed unhappy. Then we talked about my health issues. I've been feeling really dizzy and the doctors think it might be Meniere's disease. When it happens, everything seems to spin around me and I feel sick. I don't feel safe living alone, so I wanted to stay with them until I feel better. After our chat, I went back to the entrance to grab my things from my bag. As I was sorting out my stuff in the hallway, I heard Tony and Alice talking. Tommy, are you really okay with Mom staying here? I don't want to live with an old lady, Alice said. She's my mom, come on. Plus, you work part-time, so it's not like you'll always be here, Tony replied. Yeah, but what about her days off? How long is she going to stay? I want her gone, Alice insisted. Don't say that. Mom will leave eventually. Let's talk about money tomorrow. Just keep your voice down. She might hear you, Tony warned. She can't hear us. She's old. They say old age brings sharp ears for insults, Alice remarked. And there I was, listening to their talk in the chilly hallway. I feel bad for suddenly intruding on Tony and Alice's lives. I'm sure it's a big hassle for them. But I'm really happy to be spending time with them after all these years apart. When Tommy was young, I raised him alone after my husband passed away. We didn't have much and Tony faced his own struggles with sickness and all. This doesn't make up for that, but I wanted to come here to share my apologies and gratitude. That's why I came to this house. It's a shame I'm not welcomed, but they have their own lives to lead. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Tony left for work, leaving just Alice and me. While I was doing some crafting in the living room, Alice came up to me. Hey Sarah, can you not make such a mess? I glanced around and saw fabric bits and threads everywhere. Oh sorry, I'll tidy up. Do you know what this is? I showed her the little pouch I was sewing with a cute turtle design. This is a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make crafts with them. It even has a zipper on its shell, I explained. That's nice, but Sarah, you can't just hang around here all day. Alice interrupted, clearly uninterested. At least go somewhere else when I'm not working. You're getting in the way. But I get dizzy if I go out too much, I said. I'll drag you to the community center nearby. You can stay there during the day. I have things to do at home, Alice said firmly, without room for discussion. And also help with the chores while you're here. You're not just here to relax. It's the least you can do since we're letting you stay, she added, leaving me surprised. So I finally said, okay, and got up slowly. From then on, I found myself doing all the housework, even though I felt dizzy and achy. I took on the chores that Alice and Tommy seemed to expect me to do, almost like I was their housekeeper. I noticed that Alice was always glued to her phone, maybe neglecting the housework before I arrived. That evening, when Tommy came home, he approached me with a smile and asked, Mom, did you bring your bank card? I looked at him over my reading glasses, nodded, and got up. I took out my bank card from the little pouch I made and handed it to Tommy. He quickly checked it, and his expression changed. Wait, Mom, is this all the money you have saved? Do you have any other accounts? He asked, his face tightening. That's all I have. I don't need much at my age, and I don't have any health problems, I said, smiling. But as the conversation went on, Tommy's expression grew darker. Wow, this isn't much money at all, not even $10,000. You said you were living well abroad, so I assumed. Tommy kept questioning me, asking if I had more money hidden away. When I said no, he sighed and seemed disappointed. Fine, I'll keep hold of this card for now. I'm doing you a favor by letting you stay here, so this is the least you can do. After Tony got my account details, he took my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Tony sighing loudly through the wall that separated our rooms. Oh, what a disappointment. I thought Mom had a lot of money. But it turns out our finances are in bad shape because of her. I shouldn't have agreed to let her stay. We should kick her out. She's not bringing us any benefits, Tony complained. It seemed like both of them were pretty sure of themselves. They talked openly in the next room, almost as if they wanted me to hear. In my cold bed, I held back tears of loneliness and sadness. The next day, since Alice had the day off, she drove me to the local community center. I opened my bag to continue my crafting in the lounge area, but realized I had forgotten the fabric I needed at home. I hesitated but couldn't bring myself to ask Alice to go back and get it. Luckily, I wasn't feeling too dizzy that day. I knew the area, so I decided to take a walk back home to get the fabric. When I finally reached home, I peeked through the window and saw Alice with a man I didn't recognize. At first, I thought he might be a guest, but they seemed really close. I hesitated outside for a moment, then decided not to go in. It dawned on me that maybe they wanted me out so I wouldn't interrupt their affair. Back at the community center, I couldn't stop thinking about Alice and the man. I decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided mentioning the situation and continued interacting with Tony and his wife. But whenever I left the house, I made sure to leave a red turtle pouch on the living room side table, just to let them know I was aware of what was going on. 3 months went by like this. I had been staying with Tony's family for a while now, essentially becoming their household maid. Whenever I was at home, I had to do endless chores. And when Alice was around, I was sent off to the community center. Most of my savings had been drained by Tony, who had a gambling addiction and spent a lot of his time on lotteries and slot machines. His obsession with money seemed to stem from the financial struggles he faced as a child. I tried to talk to him about it at first, but it always made him angry. After 3 months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. One night before a long weekend, I decided to do something I had been thinking about. "Tell me, Alice, I want to thank you for letting me stay with you. Tell me, I know things were tough for you when you were young because we didn't have much money. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, but I'm grateful." I took out a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. "This is a token of my appreciation for both of you. I hope you'll accept it." To my surprise, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade gift. "Mom, that's enough. Are we really out of money? Can't you think of some French account or something?" Tony said, "I've told you, we're out of money. Look, I put a lot of effort into making this. Can't you just accept it as a symbol of my love? Remember how happy you used to be when I would fill the shell with candy and a little pocket money?" Tommy started getting more and more irritated. "I'm not a kid anymore. I don't want something like this." "Sarah, how much longer do you plan on depending on us? It's getting annoying," Tommy continued. Both Tony and his wife gave me a cold look. Desperate, I tried to remind Tony, "Do you remember Joe? He helped us out in our old apartment." "What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories. Are we done?" Shocked into silence, I held onto the turtle pouch tightly, feeling the texture of the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. After our conversation the night before, I had decided it was time for me to leave as well. So I quickly packed my bag with the help of a arranged carrier and sent it off to my home in France. I made sure to include the red turtle pouch in my carry-on bag. Before leaving, I left a simple note on the table thanking them and saying goodbye, and then I left the house where I had been staying for 3 months. Instead of going straight home to France, I stayed in a hotel in the US for a while. I had things to take care of, and I figured Tony and his wife would contact me eventually. Sure enough, about 2 weeks later, Tony called me. "Mom, what's going on?" "That turtle pouch, it's yours, right?" I could hear Tony's frustration over the phone. "Ah, you noticed." I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on TV. Inside the turtle-shaped pouch that I had planned to give to Tony and his wife was a check for $1 million. It was my way of thanking them for all they had done for me and apologizing for any trouble I may have caused them in the past. Some people might think it's shallow to make amends with money, but I had been dreaming of the day when I could give it to them, saving up bit by bit over the course of 40 years. Before meeting Tony after a long time, I did some investigating and discovered that he was in debt. He had tried to pay off his gambling debts by gambling even more, only to find himself in even deeper trouble. Despite having a steady job, he was struggling. All I wanted was for him to clear his debts and leave peacefully, but when I offered to help, they refused to accept my gesture. It seemed like they had completely forgotten about the kindness they had shown to my family and me in the past. So I decided to divide the $1 million check into smaller sums and donate them to charities and welfare organizations across America. I put the donations in the same handmade turtle pouch and sent them anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation. making headlines and trending on social media. On social media, Alice's son commented, "Hey mom, isn't that the turtle pouch?" "Yeah, mate. So does that mean you were going to give us one filled with money too?" "Yes, exactly. That was my way of saying thank you and I'm sorry. I've been making both the pouch and saving the money to give to you." "Well, you could have told us. We would have accepted it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either." Tony's voice was filled with rage as he yelled on the phone, completely losing control. "That money belongs to me. How dare you trick me? Give it back." I couldn't bear to listen any longer, so I pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke up. "Okay, let's calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle pouch left, and if you really want it, it's yours." After some time, Tony finally calmed down and repeated his request for the turtle pouch. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On the appointed day, I brought the last red turtle pouch in an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there and immediately demanded the money before I even had a chance to sit down. As I quietly took up the red turtle pouch, Tony grabbed it immediately and unzipped its shell. But inside wasn't a check, it was a small electronic device. "What's this?" Tony asked, puzzled as he examined the device. He found a button and pressed it, and a voice recording started playing. Alice, who was standing next to Tony, went pale as she heard her own voice talking affectionately with another man, someone who clearly wasn't Tommy. Confused and shocked, Alice tried to snatch the recording from Tommy's hand, but he held onto it tightly. As they struggled, I opened the envelope I had brought and laid out several photos on the table. Pictures of Alice having an affair with another man in their home. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Alice became flustered and kept asking why. Tommy picked up each photo, studying them carefully. "Ever since I came to your house, something didn't feel right. A friend suggested I hire someone to investigate, and they even offered to cover the costs. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this?" Alice demanded. "You're my son's wife. It's heartbreaking to think that family would deceive each other. You'll understand when you're older. I suppose fate brought me here to uncover your infidelity." "Have you been lying to me all this time? Since when, Tommy?" Tony remained silent, and now it was Alice's turn to speak. "And what about you wasting all our money on gambling? I only spend what I earn, and you have your part-time jobs, so you should have some money saved up too." Listening to their argument, it became clear that this couple had been keeping their financial struggles hidden until now. Neither of them had any money left. "Alice, you were $40,000 in debt. You've been giving all your earnings to your affair partner. I had the investigator check your finances." Both Tony and Alice were shocked, and they started shouting at each other. I was stunned when I heard the results of the investigation. This couple was on the verge of bankruptcy. "Look, if we get Mom's money, we can pay back the debt. So give it to us now." I donated all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle figurine. He wasted my savings on gambling. "What? You're kidding me. All of it?" In a fit of anger, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other customers started to pay attention, and the staff rushed over. "The $1 million is mine. It was supposed to be mine. Give it back." Tony's rage escalated to the point where the police had to be called to restrain him. After some intervention from the officers, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel due to concerns about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had completely broken down due to the affair and financial troubles. They ended up getting divorced. Tony, now single, became even more engrossed in gambling, accumulating more debt. He was caught attempting to embezzle company funds, which led to him being fired. His outburst at the cafe was captured on video and spread on social media, making it hard for him to find another job. Unable to bear the shame, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice had nobody to turn to and moved into a rundown public housing unit, living alone. Just as I was about to make a donation for turtle rescue, an online post I made joking about my own turtle went viral. Alice began facing harassment and stalking, which eventually affected her part-time job and resulted in her being fired. Even the man she was having an affair with grew tired of her and left. Now, with no source of income, she relies on temporary assistance for needy families to survive. After returning to my home in France and finishing unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress with ease. As I reviewed some work documents, I heard a noise at the entrance. It seemed Joe, my roommate, had returned home. "Hey, Madam President, welcome back. How was your trip to America?" Joe greeted me with a smile as he set down his coat and bags. Joe is 75 years old and was a resident in the same apartment complex where my son Tommy and I lived years ago. During that difficult time, I was struggling with poverty after losing my husband and caring for a young Tommy who had asthma. We had no utilities, and with no one to turn to, I felt desperate and considered giving up. It was Joe and his wife, our upstairs neighbors, who saved us. They became our lifelines. Please call me Sarah. I'm back, and look, I brought back many souvenirs. Wow, all my favorites. Thanks, I'll take some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow. Joe examined each of the souvenirs piled up on the table, his face glowing with happiness. After we had gotten back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we ran into each other in the city, and I started helping with a support program for the needy that Joe had founded. By then, Joe's wife had passed away, and we became business and life partners. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What began as a small initiative between Joe and myself has blossomed into a large-scale international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, our main focus is on supporting single mothers and their children. A few years back, we relocated to France to study their advanced support systems. Although we've gained recognition in France, we're still relatively unknown in America. I'm planning to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend some quality time with Tony and his family before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't make them understand how I felt, but that's their decision to make. Even if it was only for a brief moment, I was grateful to have had the opportunity to spend time together as a family. Now at the age of 70, I refuse to let my age define me. There's still so much I want and need to accomplish. As I straightened my back in my dress, I began to ponder the content of my upcoming international speech for tomorrow. Why is the money we sent to Mom only $670? My husband shouts angrily. I had to stop sending more money. Look at what's left in your mom's account on this paper, I reply straightforwardly. My name is Penelope and I'm 42 years old. I work part-time at a supermarket. I have 2 sons, Ethan in 8th grade and Leo in 6th grade. My husband is Asher, who's 43 years old. Asher's mom, my mother-in-law, is 67 years old. Ever since Asher's dad passed away, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Even though she gets some money from a pension, it's not much. When my father-in-law died, we talked about it. He raised Asher, and I feel indebted to him. I figure he'll need more help in the future too. So I've decided to send her $335 every month as a sort of caregiving payment, I explain. They told us the house loan is paid off now. My late father-in-law left behind $200,000. As per his will, Asher, being his only child, agreed to give the entire amount to my mother-in-law. I thought maybe we could manage with that money. It's scary living without any income and seeing your savings shrink. My mother-in-law understands this too, so she suggested I give her a monthly allowance. It's more of a symbolic gesture, I add. But less than a year after we made that decision, my mother-in-law called in tears, sparking an argument about the allowance because of COVID. I can't afford to go to the cheaper supermarket, so I can't save any money, she says. COVID can be scary for some people, my husband acknowledges. Yeah, it's scary to go out. I agree. So if there's something you need, just tell me. I can pick it up from the specific store on my way home from work, I offer. But my mother-in-law insists that's not the problem. It's not just groceries, it's everyday items too. Oh, I understand now. It's not only food. Okay, I'll go to that store for everyday items as well. I promise. Honestly, do I have to spell it out for you? It's not just groceries and everyday items. It's things like hair dye to cover gray hair too, she shouts. In other words, she's saying, please don't make me explain so much. The allowance isn't enough. My husband, feeling guilty, says, I'm sorry, Mother, and decides to increase it to $670 without asking me first. Wow, $670 is a lot of money. I couldn't hide my surprise at the decision made without asking me first. That's like all the money I earn from my part-time job. And soon, our older child will be taking entrance exams, and we can't skip sending them to cram school. I asked the store manager for more hours, but it's been hard to balance work and home. Mom, you're never home at night, my younger child complained. I'm sorry, sweetie. Mommy is working hard to earn money for us, I said, feeling guilty. Today, I made a really cool piggy bank at school and got praised for it. But I can't even talk about it now. He banged on the table. I'm sorry. I'll buy you the toy you wanted for your birthday. I promise I'll work hard for it, I reassured him, promising to buy the toy my second son wanted. Then my husband walked by. Just wait a bit for the toy. Grandma is making sacrifices too. Mommy isn't working just for toys, she's working for Grandma, he said before leaving me feeling guilty. Even for our child's birthday gift, we were cutting back for my mother-in-law's sake, and the way he said it made me wonder, who was I really working for? My husband's words left me confused. Surprisingly, our younger child stayed and patted my shoulder. Mom, you're doing your best. Don't worry, Mom. I don't need the toy right away, my younger child reassures me. But that feeling of uncertainty returned when my mother-in-law called. Did you get the envelope? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, I replied. You can probably guess what happened next. Indeed, today I received an envelope from my mother-in-law. When I opened it, I found a copy of a bank statement inside. I quickly checked the remaining balance. I was surprised and my voice slipped out unintentionally. $6. It's less than $10 now. Can you see it? My mother-in-law seemed to understand that I had seen the contents of the envelope and her voice quivered with tears. And now, with prices going up, I can't even afford to pay the electricity and gas bills, she sobbed. But I tried to keep talking while looking at the statement. That's enough. All you do is tell me what to do and what not to do, going on about useless things and procrastinating. Last time, you talked about running errands for household items and groceries, but those were useless solutions. That's why I called at this hour. Asher, are you there? Take over for me. My husband had already come close during the phone conversation, and he said, Mom, let me take over, as he took the receiver from me. Yeah, Asher responded. Then he exclaimed, oh no, letting her use up the entire inheritance, letting the balance drop below $10. I'm sorry, I think this is definitely a misfortune for my humble parents. Yeah, I understand. So starting from next month, if I send $2,000 each month, will that be okay? He blurted out suddenly. What? $2,000? How could the allowance be that much? I stood there in shock as I listened. After he hung up the phone, Asher shouted angrily. Why is the allowance for Mom only $670? I told you it should be at least $670. I thought you had increased it. But you see, inside that envelope, I tried to explain, but he interrupted me and continued. I told you I owe her for raising me. In the future, she'll probably need more help. If you think of it as caregiving expenses, why is my mother in such a heartbreaking situation? His voice grew louder as he expressed his frustration. I was already stretched to my limit. Even the $335 allowance was tough to manage. I thought increasing it to $670 was an achievement. I worked more hours at my part-time job to cope. I even learned to cook more affordable meals. I managed the household expenses with all those efforts, but it wasn't enough, and there were sacrifices. I did it for my children just like I do everything else. She scolded me abruptly, deciding on a $2,000 allowance without consulting me and without even considering how our allowances were being used according to my mother-in-law's bank statement. Above all, I'm working for the sake of my sons, not for my mother-in-law. That's enough, I said in a cold voice. I realized that when a person gets too angry, their voice becomes quiet. What do you mean? It's fine. Are you getting defensive now? My husband mocked me. I was no longer willing to yield to his words. After seeing a copy of that statement, I absolutely couldn't accept such a ridiculous proposal as a $2,000 allowance. I've had enough of a son who blindly believes and supports a money-seeking mother and grandmother. People who can't prioritize our family don't belong here. Get out. If you want to support your mother so badly, then go live with her. You can happily go to hell together. I firmly pushed my husband out the front door, then I walked him out. I shoved the envelope in his face. I'll send your belongings back and you'll cover the shipping. Take a close look at the contents of your mother's bank statement, huh? My husband asked, but I just closed the door with a laugh. Bang. What's going on, Mom? Hearing the commotion, our two children came downstairs. Well, you two. Your father said he wants to spend more money on you, and he asked Grandma to spend more too. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I explained to the children. I see. If you decided this, Mom, it must be for the best for this house, my older child said. I'll follow your lead, they added. Well, that toy. I'll wait for it until I'm an adult, no matter how many years it takes, my younger son said, trying to cheer me up. Thank you, my sons. 1 week later, my husband called out to me, help me. I responded coldly, what about? Could you at least listen to my story? He pleaded. I know what you meant when you said to look at the statement. I can't believe after all this time that I know what that means, he stammered, but he kept talking, clinging to his speech. I had to hold back my laughter on the phone. I can't believe that you would blindly trust your mother and then suggest such an outrageous proposal. I can't believe you're calling me now, wanting to get back together. You really have no idea how clueless you are, huh? That's just who you are. You question everything without realizing your own indecisiveness. You casually involve others and act surprised when it's pointed out, I said. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have one final conversation. I want to say those last words in person. It's important for the children and closure matters. I agreed to meet my husband in our house. Oh, and make sure to bring all of your mother's credit card statements, okay? I instructed. My husband and mother-in-law arrived, their lives undoubtedly in disarray. I thought this meeting would be a complete disaster. If you had just calmed down and looked at the statement, you would have figured it out. My husband insulted me outright. You ended up believing your mother, didn't you? I responded calmly. So, can you show me the statement? My husband placed the statement on the table with trembling hands, and as I looked at it, I asked, what did you discover? And then my mom, she used the money I sent her for electricity, gas, food. It wasn't just for living expenses, he confessed in a barely audible voice. It wasn't just for living expenses, was it? Actually, the other purpose was the main one, right? Please say it with your own mouth, I urged. She was a member of an escort club. I'll let my husband tell you himself, his withered confession accompanied by my mother-in-law's trembling lips. I was absolutely delighted, and I couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Your mother, whom you believed more than me, was a woman who spent money on male escorts while lying about not being able to pay the increased electricity and gas bills and came begging to her own son. I exclaimed with glee. The statement showed transactions at an escort club named Romeo, followed by expenses at high-end restaurants and bars. She was spending over $40,000 a month. After a good laugh, I took a sip of cold water to calm down, then continued speaking. Even at nearly 70 years old, how could she pick up a young, handsome guy at an escort club and take him to all those fancy places? I don't understand how she ended up in such a situation, begging for money at her own son's house. I'm really curious if she ended up addicted or something like that, I remarked, poking at her wounded pride. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law spoke up, saying, he told me he feels love for the princess who gives him an allowance. He even gives me presents. This made me spit out the water I had been drinking in surprise. I couldn't help but giggle and laugh. Referring to a 67-year-old as a princess is quite something, isn't it? Well, some people fall for words easily, like my mother-in-law becoming like a man's personal ATM. So they'll keep saying those words, won't they? I took another sip of water. If you're giving an escort guy an allowance, you must be withdrawing a considerable amount, right? It wasn't my mother-in-law who visibly shuddered, huh? The one who reacted was actually my husband. I placed a piece of paper on the table. It was fun meeting you today. I love you. Please request me again. Read the business card with a handwritten message. Huh? My husband stared at the business card on the table. I didn't expect to be kicked out of the house all of a sudden. I didn't even tidy up my own room, did I? He stammered. I found your stuff while I was cleaning up your things. Even the strange money deductions. It all makes sense now. Yes, that's right. So it's not just my fault, my mother-in-law shouted hoarsely. There was a glass of lemonade in front of her, but she hadn't touched it at all. It might be expected, since she had been continuously blamed. However, as the target of blame shifted, she attempted an unexpected turnaround. My husband's voice trembled as he reacted to this blow. But because I've been laughed at this much, am I the only one being ridiculous? Isn't that so unfair? My husband retorted. Huh? No, just wait a minute. "You're making me spend this much money, and now you're saying this?" That's my line. Asking for money because your allowance isn't enough. I can't believe you're into escort girls too. Like parent, like child, must be an annoying way to spend money. It's over now, isn't it? Both of you are done. At my words, both my husband and mother-in-law had no words left. "Hey kids, come down here for a sec." I called up to the second floor. The two kids came down. "I need to talk to you about something serious. Mom and I have decided it's best if we split up because Dad and Grandma have been using a lot of money selfishly." I explained honestly. Dad has been giving money to another woman, and Grandma has been spending a lot on a younger man. They're asking for even more. My husband tried to stop me from saying it in front of the kids, but I felt they needed to know the truth. The older child spoke up, agreeing that Dad shouldn't hide things. They pointed out how Dad said there wasn't enough money for toys while spending it on other people. The younger one added that their older sibling probably needed money for tutoring. "That's right. I want to save money for your future, not spend it on strangers," I said firmly. Hearing this, the older child said, "Then it's goodbye from us too." The younger one agreed, saying they could manage without toys. They both thought it was wrong for Dad to spend money on someone else instead of us. In the end, it was clear that I had to cut ties with both my husband and my mother-in-law. Because of my divorce from my husband and mother-in-law's extravagant spending, I received a significant amount of alimony. Sadly, they continued their reckless habits, and I could see the consequences coming. Eventually, they hit rock bottom, accumulating debts so severe that they had to give up their house. Despite having to pay alimony and child support, they seemed unable to manage their finances wisely. I refused to give them any leeway. They need to fulfill their obligations entirely. I've taken up part-time work to support us. Although we can't afford many luxuries, the three of us are making ends meet decently. It's not extravagant, but I'm determined to do everything I can for my children. My hope is to continue living peacefully with the three of us in the future. My brother invited us to stay at his place and said we wouldn't have to pay rent or bills. I work with money and my husband Charlie fixes cars. We live in the house where I grew up. But it's not just any house. It's been in my family for a long time and used to be where my dad ran his business. My brother was supposed to take over the business, so he studied economics in college. He even went to Oxford University to learn more about running a business. After that, he came back to the US and worked with our dad for a while. When our parents retired and moved away, they gave the business to my brother and the house to me. So my husband and I decided to live there. The house is in a great spot, close to public transportation and other important places like shops, hospitals, and schools. It's perfect for us now, and even when our kids grow up and move out, we'll still be comfortable here. I'm really thankful my parents gave me this house. We were excited about our future here, but things took a bad turn unexpectedly. My mother-in-law started visiting a lot after we moved in. She kept asking about my parents' money because they used to run a business. She'd say things like, "Hey Maya, how much money do your parents have? What will you get when they pass away?" It made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to be rude, so I just said, "I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it much. They gave us this house, so maybe there won't be much money left." I tried to brush it off, but she kept pushing, saying, "That can't be true. They're getting old. They must have talked to you about their money." It seemed like she was really interested in their wealth, like she was expecting to get something. I already knew what I would inherit, but I decided not to tell her or my husband, who's close to her, to avoid any more trouble. Something really unexpected happened next. Out of nowhere, my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family moved into our house. It was a holiday morning around 8:00 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find movers standing there. I was shocked and confused. Then my mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family showed up and said, "We're moving in here today, so take care of us." When I saw their smirking faces, I felt a shiver down my spine. My husband woke up, and when I asked him what was going on, he seemed unfazed and said, "What's the problem? There's plenty of space in this house for all of us." He acted like it was totally normal for them to move in. As if that wasn't surprising enough, my sister-in-law said something even more unbelievable. She said, "We were invited by your brother, Maya. He said we don't have to pay rent or bills, so we're counting on you." Then my brother-in-law started barging into rooms without asking and said, This room gets good sunlight, so we'll take it, Charlie. Move all the stuff out into the hallway. I felt really dizzy after all this happened. This is my house, but they're acting like they own it, opening doors and claiming rooms. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family have been pretty rude for a while, especially my sister-in-law, who even went through my bag without asking. If they keep this up, they'll start taking over my space. I've had enough. This is my house, so why are you acting like you own it? I've had it. I want everyone to leave. I usually keep my cool and don't raise my voice, but seeing these people move into the house my parents gave me without asking and acting like it's theirs pushed me over the edge. That's why I lost control and yelled at all three of them. But then something unexpected happened. How dare you talk to us like that? You're the one who should leave. The moment those words were said, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. Did I just get slapped? It took me a few seconds to realize what had happened. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it, and all I could feel was the throbbing pain on my cheek. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I can't live with people who would do something like that, but this house belongs to me. I don't want them living here like parasites, so I decided to pack my things and leave, planning to tell my family about what happened. I needed to find a place far away from here, so I rented a monthly apartment for now. I'll have to commute to work from there. As soon as I told my parents about what happened over the phone, I could sense their anger, even from a distance, especially from my dad. He's always been very caring and has adored me and my brother. As a CEO, he was strict, but as a father, he was always kind and ready to help us out of any trouble. I didn't want to drag my parents, who were just about to retire, into this mess, but I had no choice because my rightful home was being taken away from me. While I stayed in the monthly apartment, I was sure that my husband and his family were making themselves comfortable in my house. So I decided to take action based on suggestions from my brother and father. A few days later, during my break, I checked my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages from my husband. I knew exactly why he was trying to reach me. I took action and called the water and electric companies to shut off the utilities. Our house relies completely on electricity, and without it, nothing works. We haven't set up solar panels yet, so there's no other way to get power. Since it's really hot right now, living without electricity and water must be tough. My husband's calls were probably about dealing with this situation. Just as I was about to ignore his call, my husband rang again, perfectly timed with my break. Hey, what's going on? There's no power, and the water isn't running. Did you cut off the electricity and water? I could tell from his voice that he was in a panic. The house belongs to me, so now that I'm not living there, it wouldn't make sense to keep the electricity and water running, right? That's why I have them shut off. If I kept the utilities on, I'd have to pay the bills even though I'm not living there. I can't agree to that, so I naturally had them turned off. When I explained this to my husband, he got really angry and insisted that I turn the services back on right away. But just because he wants me to doesn't mean I'm going to agree. I get it. If they want to renew the services, they should pay for it themselves. But whenever this comes up, they always say things like, "It's your house, so you should foot the bill." Their words and actions don't match. Anyway, I have no plans to renew the contract or tell them to leave the house immediately. I simply hung up the phone after saying that as my break was ending. Later on, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law all called me saying the same thing. They wanted me to reconnect the electricity and water because their room was too hot and uncomfortable, and it was inconvenient without water. But these were their problems, not mine. After listening to their complaints, I told them to deal with it themselves and hung up. I thought they were just being greedy and hoped they'd give up and leave soon. Even after a week went by, there was no sign of them leaving. So I decided to take stronger action. I talked to a lawyer from my father's company about the situation and asked him to send a notice to my husband. The notice was about trespassing. They had entered my house without permission, forced me out, and were using it as if it were their own. I warned them that I was considering taking legal action against them for this. Why did I receive this document from a lawyer? Did things really have to escalate this far? My husband, who seemed surprised and panicked by my actions, came to me seeking a resolution. Knowing how much they care about their reputation, the thought of being sued would be really stressful for them. They definitely don't want to deal with a lawyer, but they also don't want to give up their current lifestyle. So they're likely trying to find a way to convince me to let them stay. I can see through my husband's intentions very clearly, but I couldn't bring myself to listen to their pleas, so I didn't give in to my husband's requests. My husband finally exploded in anger, forgetting he was at work, and yelled at me, "Stop it. Just because we're being a bit sneaky doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Go back to how things were and drop the lawyer." Despite his loud outburst, I remained unaffected. Instead, I felt annoyed by his call, thinking, who does he think he is, taking over someone else's house? No matter how much he shouts, my stance won't change. If they continue squatting there, I'll take legal action. They better think twice before acting. Even as my husband continued yelling over the phone, I ignored him and hung up. It felt like a waste of time. I had already discussed divorce with my lawyer. When I got home, I saw missed calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but I knew they'd only try to settle things. I didn't want to waste any more time, so I blocked their numbers to avoid further calls. After the threat of legal action, my husband's prideful family couldn't bear the thought of being sued. They packed their bags and left the house. With the lawyer's help, the divorce negotiations went smoothly. I arranged for a cleaning service to come in, and finally, I returned to my sparkling clean house. While living separately from my husband's family and then in a monthly rental was comfortable, nothing beats being back in my own home. However, I noticed that the house needed some renovations in certain areas. I discussed this with my father, who introduced me to a reliable contractor. I began planning the renovations with their help. Living alone is really comfortable. I enjoy the freedom of not being tied down by anyone else. I found myself enjoying the freedom of my current life. I could lounge on the sofa without anyone scolding me, eat whatever I wanted without judgment. But then, I received a call from an unknown number after 3 months of silence. Initially, I ignored it, thinking it might be a contractor. However, when the calls persisted, I reluctantly answered, only to find it was from my ex-husband, from whom I had recently divorced with the help of a lawyer. We had made a pact to never contact each other again. So why was he calling now, especially after changing his number? We had agreed through our lawyers to stay apart for good. There was nothing left to discuss, so I asked him not to contact me again. Just as I was about to hang up, he pleaded, "Please just listen to me for a moment. I'm begging you." Despite my reluctance, he began speaking without my consent. It turned out his company was facing a severe financial crisis, and they had decided to reduce his salary. Moreover, my mother-in-law's health was failing, rendering her unable to work. My sister-in-law and her husband couldn't contribute much to the household expenses due to his unstable job situation. Although my sister-in-law was working multiple part-time jobs, most of her earnings were going towards paying off her husband's debts. My ex-husband was struggling to make ends meet, and with his salary cut, things were only going to get tougher. After hearing all of that, all I could think was, okay, so what? They barged into my house without permission, did whatever they wanted, and even tried to kick me out. It's simply unbelievable. I feel nothing for people who would do such a thing, and I have no sympathy for them. Even if you tell me about their troubles, it doesn't change anything. They're your family, you should deal with it yourself. There's nothing I can do about it. My ex-husband started to panic even more at my words. Don't say that. We're in serious trouble. We won't even be able to pay the rent for our apartment and will struggle to buy food tomorrow. We used to be a family, right? Please help us, he pleaded, almost in tears. But I wasn't convinced. When I was in trouble, he did nothing to help, and he, along with my mother-in-law, looked down on me. Just like her, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law always belittled me. They insulted me for my appearance or my old-fashioned views. They didn't care how much it hurt me. My mother-in-law not only made things worse, but she also pressured me to have a baby as soon as possible. She forced strange herbal medicines on me, booked unnecessary doctor's appointments, and spread rumors to the neighbors that I was unable to conceive. Looking back, there wasn't a single positive aspect to my marriage. My ex-husband, who used to be kind before we got married, became a puppet under my mother-in-law's control after the wedding. On the first day my mother-in-law barged into our house, I was out for an appointment. She cried to my husband, saying she wanted to be friends with me, but the moment we met, she would badmouth me. She'd say things like, "My son seems to have lost weight. Is it because your cooking is so bad?" Whether we were at home or out, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law would join in, laughing at me. I can't deal with people who behave like this anymore. No matter what you say, my feelings won't change. I can't help you guys, so I'm going to hang up now. And please never contact me again." With that, I finally hung up the phone and blocked the new number. Knowing my ex-husband, he might change his number and try to contact me again. So I decided to change my phone number at the store over the weekend. But before that, those four broke the promise made through the lawyer and suddenly showed up at my house at 11 o'clock p.m. "Open up, let us in, and take care of us. We're family, you should help us." They were banging on the door, yelling loudly without considering the late hour. "What's going on at this time? Please go back home, you're disturbing the neighbors." When I went to open the door, they seemed ready to force their way in. So I tried talking to them through the intercom, but they didn't care. They continued banging on the door and causing a commotion. I couldn't believe I was dealing with people behaving so recklessly. I felt overwhelmed and considered calling the police when I heard sirens approaching from outside. It seemed a neighbor had taken the initiative as soon as they heard the police sirens. The group, startled, thought I had called the police and attempted to flee. However, with a crowd gathered, escape wasn't an option. Consequently, they were escorted to the police station by the responding officers. I was questioned about the incident and I explained everything that had transpired. News of my ex-husband and his companion's actions spread rapidly in the neighborhood. Among the crowd was a co-worker of my ex-husband's, and by the next day, the entire office was aware of the situation. Already struggling due to a salary reduction, getting the police involved sealed my ex-husband's fate with his employer. He was fired, unable to afford his apartment rent anymore. Financial strain created tension between him and his sister's family, leading to their shared living arrangement coming to an end. Now, Charlie resides in public housing with his mother, working multiple part-time jobs to get by. Even his mother has taken on part-time work, eager to contribute financially.
Hi, I'm Claire, and I'm 34 years old. Let me tell you about the time I decided to get back at my mean mother-in-law who was determined to make my life miserable. I tried to be patient and ignore her behavior for a while, but eventually I couldn't take it anymore. Let me explain a bit. Whenever my mother-in-law gave me something, it was never very good. Like on our wedding day. This present is from my mother-in-law, Justine. Let's see what's inside. It's a used spatula. Well, thank you. And on my 31st birthday, Justine, you really shouldn't have. What's inside? Oh, it's, what exactly is it? It's a shovel, dear. Ah, how nice. But it looks a bit old. It's a fixed-up shovel. I later discovered she took it from the neighbor's shed and gave it to me. Another time, when I hosted a dinner party, she brought the cheapest bottle of wine she could find. At that point, I wished she wouldn't bother doing anything for me at all. But what really bothered me were the times she insisted on cooking for me, only for the food to taste awful every single time. At first, I was understanding. Not everyone is a great cook, and that's okay. I thought it was the thought that counted, not necessarily the taste. But then I learned that the same dishes she made for me tasted amazing when she cooked for other people. After trying to convince myself otherwise for a while, I realized she was intentionally making my food taste bad. Claire, try my casserole. I made it. I'm really full from all the food you've given me. Please, just take a bite for me. I reluctantly took a bite, feeling uneasy about what might happen next. As expected, the casserole tasted terrible. It made me wonder if she was trying to harm me with it. You might be wondering what my husband thought about all of this. Well, he didn't believe me. I didn't blame him. It's tough to accept such a strange idea, especially when it's about your own mother. But I kept asking him to try the food she made for me, hoping he'd see what I meant. Every time, he'd dismiss me, saying I was imagining things. Sometimes he'd almost try it, but Justine always stopped him. Hey, that food is for Claire. I made it just for her, considering her dietary needs. Yes, I have specific dietary needs because I'm a vegetarian, but I married into a family that loves their meat. So whenever there's a big family meal, my mother-in-law, Justine, would make a separate dish for me, which I appreciated. But it always seemed like she didn't put much effort into it. After realizing she was messing with my food, I tried to understand her. Maybe she was upset about having to make a special dish for me. But that didn't explain why she gave me terrible gifts all the time. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt until a few months ago. I invited a coworker who's also a vegetarian to a family cookout. Justin made 2 vegetarian dishes, one for my coworker and one for me. I tasted my coworker's dish secretly, and it was delicious, but mine was awful. It was clear that Justin could cook well. When I told my husband Liam about it, he just brushed it off. "Oh, come on, Claire, you're overreacting and being a bit rude." I'm telling you, she's intentionally messing with my food. She doesn't want to make good food for me. Even if the food isn't great, which I doubt, what do you expect from her? She's just one person. Maybe you could help her out in the kitchen, especially with vegetarian dishes. I've offered to help many times, but she gets defensive and thinks I don't like her cooking, which you don't. And when I suggest things, she gets upset. There's no pleasing her. Maybe you should bring your own food to gatherings then, even if it seems rude. It's not like you have a serious allergy. You're just a vegetarian, and everyone can make vegetarian food. But remember Lucy, your coworker? She was nice. Yeah, Lucy's food was great, even the vegetarian dishes. They both took a moment to think about everything. Liam sat down on the bed, thinking deeply. "Well, say something," Claire urged. "Look, you're my wife, and I love you. I want to trust you, but I think you might be imagining things. I understand that my mom can be odd with gifts, but sabotaging your food, that's really messed up and dangerous, isn't it?" "Exactly. One time, I swear I smelled bleach in my food. I had to make an excuse to go to the bathroom so I wouldn't have to eat it." "Claire, maybe because you and my mom don't get along, you're seeing her differently than the rest of us. She's a fantastic cook." "I agree. After trying Lucy's food tonight, I'm sure she can cook well, but for some reason, she doesn't put in the effort with me." "Enough. I won't let you talk badly about my mom anymore. She's a great cook. You're imagining things." I was frustrated. How many times did I have to convince him I was telling the truth? I decided to prove it. I waited for the next family gathering to make my move. About a month later, my mother-in-law called. "I'm good, thank you. How about you?" "Oh, I'm excited. We're having another family gathering this weekend to celebrate Uncle JJ's return from France. Can you and Liam make it?" "Of course, Justine. We wouldn't miss it." "Oh, that's great. Uncle JJ prefers simple things, even though he's from France. So we're keeping it casual with sliders and sandwiches. You can even bring your coworker friend again. She was lovely." "Unfortunately, she can't make it this time, but Liam and I will be there." "Oh, that's too bad. But I'm glad you both can come. Oh, one more thing before I forget. I've decided to get you some special plates to make it easier to separate vegetarian and non-vegetarian dishes. They're beautiful navy blue plates." "No problem, Justine. Thank you." "Okay, see you soon." After hanging up, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Normally, different plates wouldn't bother me, but knowing what I knew about her, I realized it was just another way for her to make me feel isolated from everyone else. Everyone else in the family always enjoys their meals, but mine are always terrible. So when I complain, I look picky and fussy. But that's not true. There are rumors going around that I'm just being difficult, and I wish I could prove them wrong by sharing my food. But Justine always stops me and gets upset if I don't eat what she made. Sometimes I manage to avoid eating it, but usually I have to force it down quickly to avoid tasting it. Whenever I visit, I dread it and can't wait to leave and make my own food. But this weekend was different. I was excited because I had a plan to show everyone that I wasn't making things up. I had real concerns, and everyone needed to see that. The weekend came, and Liam and I brought our coleslaw to the barbecue. There was so much meat everywhere. Even the meat lovers thought it was too much. Despite my initial worries, the party was going well. I was enjoying chatting with my in-laws and playing with my nieces and nephews. But when Justine called us to the dining table, my stomach churned with dread. I forced myself to smile and sit next to Liam. "You see, Claire, everyone's having fun. Why can't you relax? Mom put a lot of effort into this. Maybe if you had a better attitude, you'd enjoy the food." I was tired of Liam's lectures. He had no idea what it was like dealing with his mom's awful cooking, but I had a plan. Justine brought out the food, and my plate, as promised, was navy blue. It stood out among the white plates on the table, but I didn't care. I was ready for my revenge. As everyone sat down to eat and grace was said, I suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, is that a snake?" People were startled and chaos ensued. The kids got excited and wanted to see the snake, while the adults sprang into action, with the women leading the children inside and the men cautiously checking out where I pointed. While everyone was distracted, I followed behind the women, glancing back at the dinner table. Luckily, all the food looked similar, so it was hard to tell which plate was which. That's why my mother-in-law made a special plate for me, so she could tell which one had the bad food. As people started to come back from checking for the snake, I quickly swapped the sandwiches from my plate and Liam's. Just as Justine was coming back outside, Liam told her it was a false alarm and the snake was gone. As everyone returned to their seats, there was a sense of excitement in the air, despite the false alarm. People enjoyed the rush of adrenaline, even the elders. They settled back into their seats, and I apologized, saying, "Sorry, everyone. I must have misjudged the ground. Please excuse the disturbance." Everyone took it well, not too bothered by the interruption. "No problem, dear. It's better to be safe than sorry," someone replied, and everyone seemed to enjoy the little thrill of the snake scare. The mood shifted when Liam took a bite of what he thought was his sandwich, but it turned out to be my vegetarian one. "It's wild," he said before biting into it. Suddenly, he stopped and everyone's attention turned to him. He gagged and spat out the sandwich. "Ew, this is awful." "Liam, that's so rude," Justine scolded him. "I put so much effort into these dishes," Justine protested as everyone began to eat their food, enjoying the delicious flavors. They started questioning Liam about his reaction. Even Uncle JJ, who usually stayed quiet, said it tasted fine to him. "I don't know, guys. The food just tasted weird to me for a moment. Sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to be rude. Maybe it's a new recipe. Let me try again." Liam attempted to take another bite, but he started gagging before it reached his mouth. Justine was getting flustered and complained about Liam's rudeness. "Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't eat this. There's something wrong with it." "Except it's not," I added, and everyone looked at me, surprised by my statement. It was then that Liam noticed I hadn't touched my food. "Babe, why aren't you eating?" "Because it has meat in it," I admitted. The table fell silent, and I saw understanding dawn in Liam's eyes. "Mom, have you been messing with Claire's food?" Everyone exclaimed, shocked. Justine started shouting in response. "Liam, I don't know what's gotten into you. Maybe it's your spoiled wife who convinced you, but I won't stand for this. Apologize now." "No, Mom, it's your food that's spoiled. Claire was right," Liam declared. He handed his sandwich to Uncle JJ, who almost threw up after trying to take a bite. Justine's eyes turned to me, filled with venom. "What have you done?" she hissed. "I should be asking you the same thing. You've been sabotaging my meals every time I come here, making me miserable," I confessed to everyone. "I'm sorry for lying about the snake, but I needed a distraction. Justine has been poisoning my food since I joined this family." Everyone gasped in shock. It's true. I suspected it for a while, and I know I might have seemed picky, but try Justine's sandwich if you can stomach it, I urged. The sandwich made its way around the table, eliciting gagging and dry heaving from those who tried it. They advised the elderly and children not to eat it, and one person even considered going to the hospital due to the smell. "Your move, Justine," I challenged. Okay, you got me. I was sabotaging your food," Justine confessed. "Why would you do that?" "Because she hates me. She's always had it out for me since day one," Justine shouted. Liam suddenly looked ill. He vomited all over the grass and collapsed onto the patio sofa. "Mom, what did you put in that sandwich?" Liam asked weakly. Liam, "Oh God, are you okay? That sandwich wasn't meant for you. I'm so sorry, everyone. Please forgive me," Justine exclaimed in panic. Uncle JJ's homecoming had to be cut short, and several family members rushed Liam to the hospital. It turned out that the sandwich contained rancid mushrooms with traces of cat feces, causing severe food poisoning. Liam was hospitalized for some time as he recovered, and my mother-in-law was arrested after confessing to her actions. The incident made me realize the extent of her hatred towards me. She was willing to harm me just because she despised me. If it had been me, she might have delayed getting help. But because it was her son, she rushed to fix her mistake. However, it was too late. Thankfully, Liam recovered fully. During his hospital stay, he repeatedly apologized for not believing me about his mother's actions. His mother attempted to post bail, but the other family members refused, insisting she needed to reflect on her actions. Visitors informed me of her remorse and realization of her mistakes after seeing her son suffer. However, I couldn't accept her apology. It took seeing her son in pain for her to acknowledge her wrongdoing. For years, she never considered the harm she was causing. Who knows what else she put in my food? I endured it in silence, often getting sick and missing work to recover. After sharing this with my husband, he felt even more sympathetic towards me and promised to always believe me. I'm relieved I could impart 2 lessons. Always trust your spouse and don't mess with me, or you might end up in jail.
Hi, I'm Fiona, and I'm 30 years old. I stay at home with my 2 lovely kids. Life's been mostly good lately, but there's been some trouble with my husband. A while back, we had a big fight, and it's all because of his mom. You know how moms can be important to their sons, right? Well, sometimes it feels like she's a bit too involved. My husband is what you might call a mama's boy, and it can be tough to deal with sometimes. Our argument went like this. Fiona, can you come here for a minute? Sure, what's up? I need to talk to you. Please sit down. Is everything all right? Yes, everything's okay. I just wanted to talk about how we need to spend less money on some things at home. Is everything all right with your job? Yeah, work's fine. Don't worry. I just decided we need to spend more on something important, so we have to cut back on other stuff. Okay, what's the new expense? He took a deep breath, like he knew I wouldn't like what he had to say. I'm going to start giving Mom some money every month. It won't be a lot, but she's getting older and she needs some extra cash. I felt unsure and puzzled. It didn't seem right to me to give money to someone who already had plenty. My mother-in-law, Rita, had a successful business, and since she was a widow and her kids had moved out, she didn't need more money. I told my husband how I felt about it, but he tried to reassure me. How much money are we talking about? Don't worry about it. Excuse me? I'm the one managing the household, so I need to know. How much? I'm going to send her $4,000 every month. I was shocked. $4,000 a month? That seemed crazy to me, considering that's what many people spend in total each month. He'd be giving her all that money for basically nothing. I tried to argue with him, saying it wasn't possible, but he wouldn't budge. Our argument got so bad that we ended up sleeping in different beds that night. We're well off, but I always try to be smart with our money so we don't waste it. Giving someone $4,000 a month for no good reason, just because she's my mom and I love her, adds up to $48,000 a year. That money could go towards our kids' college funds, their savings accounts, our health insurance, or even better, it could go to people who actually need it, like charities. I tried explaining this to him, but he wasn't willing to listen. 5 months passed since he began sending money to his mother, and to add insult to injury, he wanted me to be the one to send it to her. It felt like he was trying to punish me and show that he'd always put his mother first. But thankfully, his arrogant behavior wouldn't last forever. I stumbled upon something shocking. It all began when my mother-in-law visited us 3 months after she started getting the allowance. Hello, Fiona. How's my favorite daughter-in-law? I'm doing well, thank you. How about you? Oh, I'm feeling so much better ever since Adam started sending me money. I was struggling a bit before, you know. The business wasn't doing as well as I hoped, but I didn't want to ask for help. I guess Adam just sensed it. It's like our special mother-son connection. I felt terrible hearing this. How could I deny her the money she needed? I always thought she was fine, but she wasn't. She started to cry, and I comforted her. I've always been okay with sharing money with those who need it, and Rita clearly did. Also, I thought, After a heart-to-heart talk, I noticed something strange. Rita started talking about going on luxury trips now that she had extra money. It didn't make sense to me. If she needed money, why talk about trips? But whenever I looked confused, she'd backtrack and say she meant once she became rich again. It was odd, but I brushed it off because she said she needed the money. 2 more months passed, and I kept sending her the money. She'd always thank me profusely, saying how much she needed it. I felt bad for doubting her and guilty for arguing with my husband. Unfortunately, we started feeling the effects of less money in our household. It's tough to change your routine. Still, I tried to cut back wherever I could, and we managed to get by. Then, one night, I came across a text from his mother while cleaning my husband's office. Curiosity got the better of me, so I read it. "Hey Adam, hope you're doing well. Could you increase my monthly allowance? I want to enjoy some extra luxuries." I was stunned. How could she ask for more money when she already gets enough to cover the average monthly expenses of a single person in America? Remember, she's a healthy, capable 65-year-old widow who lives alone. So why did she need more money, especially for luxuries? It didn't add up. My sympathy for her was fading, and I couldn't resist the urge to find out more. Ignoring the email from his mother on my husband's computer, I started searching through the family finances. Unfortunately, I didn't find any evidence of wrongdoing, so I decided to come up with a plan. "Hi Fiona, everything all right? Why are you calling so late?" "Hello Rita, I hope everything's okay with you." "Well, I'm managing, but honestly, it's been tough. Sometimes I struggle to afford even basic things like toiletries. I'm really grateful to my son for helping me out. Anyway, I was thinking, would you like to come over for tea tomorrow?" "Tea sounds wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. You know, things have been tight for me too. Sometimes I can't even afford tea, so it'll be nice to have some with you." "Oh, it'll be my pleasure, Rita. Just come over, and we'll have a nice afternoon together." "All right then, see you soon. Bye." "Bye." With that, I hung up, preparing for my plan. The next day, Rita came over, and we had a lovely time. As we were chatting during our afternoon tea, Rita excused herself to use the bathroom. This was my chance to snoop around. I quickly went through her purse and found her phone, which was unlocked. I opened her banking app, determined to uncover the truth about her financial situation. Women's intuition rarely fails, and I stumbled upon some shocking news. With my suspicions growing stronger, I delved into her financial records, expecting to find evidence of financial struggle. However, nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered. Rita had over $1.6 million in her bank account as of 6 months ago. I was stunned. I had to exit the app and reopen it just to confirm that I wasn't mistaken. But there it was, clear as day. She had a huge sum of money in her account. Confusion overwhelmed me, and then, to make matters even more bewildering, I noticed a familiar text message on her phone. It was from one of her employees, and it said, "Hello Rita, please find attached the financial breakdown of last month's earnings. Just wanted to let you know, it looks like we've made a big profit for the 4th month in a row. You're a fantastic businesswoman. I'm eager to hear your thoughts." Naturally, I opened the attached document and my eyes widened at the sight of even more money. The report showed a monthly profit of $8,400 for a small business. It was truly impressive. At this rate, the business would thrive. Sitting there in shock for what felt like ages, I couldn't help but feel furious. This lady was taking money from her son's household, from her own grandchildren, for no real reason other than to satisfy her own ego. As I heard Rita returning from the restroom, quickly, I erased all traces of my snooping and placed her phone back in her purse. Rita returned, thanking me for the tea. "Oh, Fiona, thank you again for the lovely tea. You know, as an old lady, it's tough to manage, especially when you're already struggling. Lately, things have been really hard for me, dear, and I'm so grateful for you and your husband's help. Say, could I ask you for something, if it's not too much trouble?" "Of course. What do you need?" "We're just happy to help. But may I ask, is it possible for me to get some more money, maybe an increase to $6,000 a month?" Let me tell you, it took every ounce of self-control not to explode and lash out at this woman for all the nonsense she was putting me through. I gritted my teeth and responded, "I understand your struggles since you're clearly going through a tough time. It's not like you're a millionaire or anything." She froze for a moment, a subtle reaction that I might have missed if I didn't know what I knew. But because I was aware, I caught it. Luckily for her, she quickly recovered. Oh no, of course not. If I were, I wouldn't be asking you, darling. So what do you say? Unfortunately, I don't think we can manage an extra $2,000. As soon as I said this, Rita's smile faded, replaced by what seemed like irritation. She pressed her lips together, clearly frustrated. Oh, that's all right, no problem. Well, I have to leave now, so let's catch up again soon. She left in a hurry, almost as if she had just been rejected by a lover, and wanted to escape to avoid embarrassment. Now, knowing she was a liar and a thief, any sympathy I had for her vanished. I debated whether to tell my husband what I found, but I decided against it. He needed to see her true colors for himself, especially after he criticized me so harshly. It was a painful lesson he needed to learn on his own. A couple of days passed, and it was time to send my mother-in-law her monthly allowance of $4,000. Despite having the money from my husband, I chose not to. I wanted her to feel the shock and disappointment when the money didn't arrive later that day. It would be a wake-up call she sorely needed. Just as I anticipated, my husband called me a couple of hours later. What's going on? What do you mean? Why are you upset? Don't play dumb, Fiona. I know what you're up to. Why haven't you sent Mom the allowance? I'm getting tired of your games. You won't believe what I found out. There's a reason behind what I'm doing. Listen, I understand you care about your mom. I'm sorry if you feel I don't appreciate that, but you need to hear me out. You don't even earn a dime to have a say in how we spend our money. It's my money and I'll decide what to do with it. So when I say send money, you do it. You're just a housewife. Remember that. His words shattered my heart. How could he talk to me like that? I was stunned. All the anger I'd bottled up for so long suddenly erupted. So I decided to fire back. You know what your problem is? You don't appreciate me. You think being a housewife and mom is a breeze. Well, let's see how easy it is without me. I'm not sticking around to be treated like this. But before I go, check your mother's bank account. Don't bother calling me until you've done that. Have a nice evening. Fiona, wait, I didn't mean. I hung up. I was fed up with being treated like dirt. Sometimes life throws challenges our way to remind us to take a break. I've been working so hard, and it's all taken for granted. Let's see how he manages without me, especially when he finds out his mom's a liar and a thief. I sent him the pictures I took of his mom's bank account while I was investigating. Then I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb mode. I packed bags for me and the kids and checked into a nearby hotel, not wanting to disrupt their school routine. They asked why we were staying in a hotel, and to spare them unnecessary worry, I told them our house was being fumigated, so we needed to stay here for a while. I said Daddy would stay in another hotel. I couldn't bear to burden my sweet angels with the truth. They didn't eat to suffer when I was already struggling. I needed to heal for them first. Even with my phone on Do Not Disturb, messages flooded my inbox from both my mother-in-law and my husband. But I was too drained to deal with it all, so I spent the night relaxing and playing with my children. Morning came, and I was woken up by a phone call. Hello, Miss Fiona. There's someone named Adam here who'd like to meet you. We have to confirm if you know each other for safety reasons. Yes, I know him. He's my husband. You can let him know my room number. Adam arrived at my door, and I opened it. He immediately hugged me tightly, squeezing me tightly. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for everything. I saw the evidence you sent me, and you were right not to give her any more money. He began to cry in my arms, and I comforted him. I invited him into the room, and we started talking. Darling, I'm so sorry for everything. I'm glad you realized what was going on. Can you tell me what happened? Just then, my mother-in-law called. I decided to answer it. Hello. How dare you invade my privacy like that? I could sue you, you know. Do you even need the money? How dare you try to ruin my reputation in front of my son? It doesn't matter. He loves me, and he'll do whatever it takes to make me happy. You think he'll stop sending me money? Ha, you must be delusional. You think he'll listen to a mere housewife? You're sorely mistaken. Yes, I have money. I always had money since my husband passed away. I just like to control Adam sometimes so he doesn't get too arrogant. He needs to remember that mommy comes first. The voice on the phone wasn't my mother-in-law's. It was like a monster, so different and filled with malice. Her yelling woke up the children. So, you're not bothered by how your selfishness has disrupted this household? You don't care that Adam and I have been arguing because of your actions. You don't even care that you've been stealing from your own son and grandchildren. Oh, come on, you two are headed for divorce anyway. I can't wait for that. They'll come home to me eventually. And as for those kids, well, I guess I don't really care. Mom, that's incredibly cruel. Adam, honey, listen. I didn't mean it. Did you hear all of that? Adam, my love. Nope, that won't work on me this time. I've seen your true colors, and I've had enough. You've made the past few months hell for me and Fiona. How could you manipulate me like that? I'm your son. What kind of evil has possessed you to do such a terrible thing? I can't even imagine. I fell for your tricks, but my wonderful wife Fiona saw through you all along. She knew something was off, but I shouted at her and disrespected her. Not anymore. Fiona is my real family, not you. I never want to hear from you again. Adam, wait. But I have no one. Maybe that's how it should be. Click. Adam ended the call, and though he was upset, I could see a sense of relief in him. He'd been manipulated like this his whole life. Realizing that must have been a heavy burden, but it was lifted now. For the rest of the day, Adam apologized to me and the kids for his behavior and distance. He admitted he couldn't even survive one night without me. He's realized his mistakes and promised not to repeat them. And as for his mother, he meant it when he said he didn't want to hear from her again. She kept trying to call, but he always declined. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Hi, Eric. Mommy, you're home. Yay, where's Daddy? Eric felt uneasy when he heard this question. He looked down and said, I'm not sure. What's wrong, sweetie? Are you keeping secrets with Mommy? Eric didn't say anything but continued to look down at the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. I called my husband, David. Where are you? I came for a vacation with our son. I ended the call and we quickly packed our bags and left the house. Hi, my name is Caroline and I'm 40 years old. I'm married to David, who's 42 years old. We've been married for the last 10 years. David and I used to work at the same office, which is how we met. We fell in love and got married. We were a happy couple. 2 years after David and I got married, our son Eric was born, and our family felt complete. Eric is now 8 years old. Soon after we got married, David found a better job opportunity at a different company and decided to switch. I continued working at the same company, and over time, I got promoted to a senior position. This new role required me to travel for a few days each month for business trips. When Eric was 3 years old, I was offered another promotion at work. However, it came with a condition. I would need to travel for business reasons a few days each month. I hesitated to accept because Eric was still very young, and I didn't want to leave him alone. But David reassured me. Don't worry, honey. I'll take care of Eric. Are you sure? Eric is still so little. Absolutely, he's my son too. And it's just for a few days. Okay then, I'll take the promotion. David always supported my work. He would take care of Eric when I had to go on these trips. I was really thankful to David for being so caring and supportive. Everything was going well until one day my father-in-law called. Hey David, I've been thinking about stepping down from the business. I'm getting older and can't handle the stress anymore. Is everything okay, Dad? Yeah, everything's fine. I'm just realizing I'm getting older, you know. It's time for you to take over the business. David, this isn't unexpected. I've let you have your way with everything until now, but this is something you need to do for the family. Dad, you can't make me do this. I'm not making you do anything. Just consider it. How long will you keep working a regular job? The business will give you flexibility later in life. But Dad, you're my only heir. If you don't want to take over the company, I'll have to sell it because I can't handle it anymore. I didn't intend for it to sound like that. All right, then how about you start by working here for a month and see how it goes? But Dad, you've been running the business so smoothly for years. I'm worried I won't be able to manage it as well as you. You'll learn as you go along. I didn't know anything about business until I started doing it myself. Okay, Dad, I'll give my notice at work and wrap things up there. Even though David enjoyed his job, he knew he would have to take over the family business eventually. He was prepared for it, but he didn't expect it to happen so soon. After David joined the family business, I started noticing changes in his behavior. He would come home late, spend evenings on his phone by himself, and often be away on weekends. This went on for a few months. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore and decided to talk to him about it. David, is everything okay with you? Yeah, what's up? I've noticed a change in your behavior over the past few months. What change? I don't understand what you're talking about. I wanted to address the issue so we could work on it together, but David seemed to brush off any problems. I became frustrated with his dismissive attitude. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. You come home late almost every day. And when you do come home early, instead of spending time with me or Eric, you're glued to your phone. David responded firmly, I'm busy. It's not like when I worked for a company and could finish at 7 p.m. This is my business now. I have to give it attention even after I get home. I need to coordinate with other departments over the phone. What about the weekends? Yes, sometimes we have to work on weekends too. Feeling overwhelmed, I left the room to calm down. While David's reasons made sense, I couldn't shake off my concerns. I could sense a growing distance between us, though I couldn't quite explain it to David. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and allow him time to adjust to the business. Besides, he was a loving father to Eric and took good care of him when I was away. He even made sure to take Eric on small vacations during my business trips. As time passed, David became even busier with the business. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. Despite living under the same roof, we hardly communicated. I started wondering if my work was causing this distance between us. I often felt lonely, with no one to confide in. My parents were elderly, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I had lost touch with most of my friends as I became preoccupied with family and work. David's presence in my life seemed minimal. My only solace was Eric. Although he was too young to understand my troubles, spending time with him brought me joy and relief. However, I began to notice changes in Eric. His grades were dropping, and he was spending excessive time playing video games. David spoiled him with expensive video games and toys, which only seemed to worsen the situation. The next time David brought home expensive video games for Eric, I couldn't help but feel concerned. I disagree, David. Eric already has plenty of video games and toys. Adding another one isn't necessary. What do you mean? Can't I give gifts to my own son anymore? What's the problem? Eric's grades have been slipping, and he's constantly distracted by video games. It's not good for his development. He's my son. He'll figure it out on his own. You don't need to interfere. He's my son too, David. I want to make sure he's raised to be educated and responsible. Are you implying that I'm irresponsible? I've been looking after Eric since he was 3 years old while you were away on your business trips. I was taken aback by his accusation. He had willingly taken on the responsibility of caring for Eric, and as his father, it was his duty too. But it was you who encouraged me to take the promotion and said you take care of Eric. Yes, I did. You should appreciate my support instead of constantly criticizing me. I've always appreciated your support for me. That's why I'm still here, despite your distant behavior. His words hit me hard, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Please don't try to paint yourself as the victim here. I lost my temper and yelled at him. I'm done with you. I don't feel any affection or gratitude towards you anymore. Taking care of Eric was your responsibility as a parent. I don't owe you anything for that. David shouted back, You're so ungrateful. Women like you can never be happy or keep their husbands happy. It was the first time David had spoken to me like this. Even when we weren't getting along, he had never been cruel. But now, he seemed like a different person. His words cut deep, and I couldn't help but cry. I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed uncontrollably. Eric overheard our argument. When he saw me locked in the bathroom for a long time, he started knocking on the door, crying, Mommy, please come out. Eventually, I washed my face, unlocked the door, and hugged him. Mommy, I was scared when you stayed in there for so long. I'm sorry, honey. I was just taking a long bath. But your hair is still dry. I chuckled and pinched his cheeks. You're quite clever, aren't you? How about spaghetti for dinner? Eric's eyes lit up. Yes, spaghetti. His excitement brought a smile to my face, pushing aside my worries. Meanwhile, David remained on the couch, engrossed in his phone. I prepared dinner for Eric and tucked him into bed. With an early flight for my business trip the next morning, I packed my bags and left a note with my travel details on David's desk. Since our relationship had grown distant, I always left a note with my travel plans for David so he could make arrangements for Eric or take him to my in-laws' house the next day. I went on my scheduled trip, but the recent arguments with David weighed heavily on my mind. I couldn't focus on my work. By the second day, I started feeling feverish and weak, so I decided to cut my trip short. I contacted my manager and explained that I was feeling unwell. They arranged for me to return home immediately. When I got back, I was looking forward to spending quality time with my son. However, when I arrived home, I found the front door locked and the lights off. I used my spare key to unlock the door and went inside. The house was dark, so I turned on the lights and headed upstairs to Eric's room. There, I found Eric playing with his video games on his bed. "Hey Eric, sweetheart. What are you doing here? And why are all the lights off in the house?" Excited to see me, Eric ran over. "Mommy, you're back. Yay, where's Daddy?" Eric seemed uneasy when I asked about his dad. He avoided eye contact and mumbled, I don't know. When did he leave, sweetie?" "I'm not sure, Mommy. Dad told me not to say anything." "What do you mean, honey? What's going on? Why are you keeping secrets from Mommy?" Eric remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. Worried, I called my husband. "David, where are you?" "I came for a vacation with our son." I was shocked and devastated. David had been lying to me, and Eric had heard it all. I hung up the phone, staring at David in disbelief. Eric started crying. After calming him down, Eric confessed everything to me. It was heart-wrenching to hear. "Mommy, whenever you went on a trip, Daddy left me alone in the house." "What?" He continued sobbing as I held him close. "Sweetheart, how long has Daddy been leaving you alone?" "When I was little, Daddy took care of me and never left me alone. But now he locks me inside the house. He leaves food in the fridge for me and gives me video games to play." "And when does your father come back?" "Daddy comes home late at night and leaves again in the morning," Eric replied. I couldn't believe what my son had been going through while I was away. I felt guilty for leaving him in David's care. "Why didn't you tell me, sweetheart?" "At first, Dad would leave me alone for a few hours, but he always brought back lots of chocolates and toys for me. But now he's gone for the whole day. He made me promise not to tell you anything. I hate seeing him cry like this." "Okay, calm down now. Mommy's here." "I'm sorry, Mommy, for getting the new video games. I kept my promise and didn't tell you anything." "I'm sorry, sweetheart, that you had to go through all of this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What kind of father would do such a thing? David was rewarding Eric for keeping this terrible secret. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't bear to stay in that house any longer or let my child be around such a man. We packed our bags and left immediately. I hired an investigation agency to look into David's actions. After dropping Eric off at my aunt's house, I went to David's parents and told them everything. My mother-in-law couldn't believe that David could do such things. "Caroline, please don't rush into anything. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. It's not wise to make such a big decision based solely on what Eric says. He's just a child." "What do you mean?" "I know you're trying to help, but I can't even think about talking to David right now. How can I trust him after all of this?" I was too angry to grasp her suggestion properly, even though she probably meant well. "Do you really believe Eric would make up something like this? And why would David lie to me about being on vacation with Eric?" "Well, maybe he was just caught up with work." I lost my patience and decided to lay everything out. "This incident isn't isolated. Your son has been distant since he joined the family business. He comes home late, hardly spends time with Eric, and often spends his weekends away." "Are you suggesting that all of this is because David joined the family business?" My father-in-law interrupted. "Brianna, let her speak," he said. "Caroline is right. I never imagined David would change like this after joining the business." Some of my senior employees mentioned David's growing closeness with his assistant. "What? Why did you tell me about this?" I brushed it off as workplace gossip. People tend to enjoy spreading rumors like that, my father-in-law explained. "I never thought David would do something like this. He loved you and Eric so much. I should have taken it seriously. I regret it now. Please forgive me, Caroline," he pleaded. I sat there in shock, unable to say anything. Brianna looked equally stunned. They both seemed devastated. David had always been seen as the perfect son, husband, and father. He had let everyone down. I couldn't blame my father-in-law because I, too, had never suspected David of having an affair despite our relationship growing colder. I attributed it to our busy schedules. I had foolishly hoped that once Eric grew up and we were free from parental duties, we'd be happy together again in our retirement. But now, everything felt shattered. After leaving my in-laws' house, I started receiving calls from David. I assumed my in-laws had spoken to him. I ignored his calls and blocked his number. I stayed with my aunt for a few days while searching for a new place to live. Eventually, the investigation agency sent their reports, confirming my suspicions. David had indeed been having an affair with his assistant, Lily. He would skip work and spend the day at her place whenever I was away. I hired a lawyer and sent divorce papers along with the evidence I received from the agency. It turned out that Lily was a single mother to a 5-year-old girl. She had been divorced by her ex-husband due to an extramarital affair during her pregnancy. When she applied for her job, she portrayed herself as a victim, claiming she divorced her husband because he cheated on her while she was pregnant. Despite her lack of qualifications, my father-in-law had given her a job out of sympathy. She deceived everyone in the office with her false story. It seemed she had also used the same tale on David. However, the investigation revealed her true nature. Further digging uncovered details about her ex-husband. He had divorced Lily without providing any alimony or child support, alleging that the baby was not his. A DNA test confirmed his claim. I forwarded all these details to David through my lawyer. According to my lawyer, David was devastated by the evidence and ended things with Lily. He accused her of breaking into our house. David wasn't ready to let go of our marriage. He loved Eric deeply and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. He admitted to my lawyer that he had been influenced by Lily and begged for another chance. He also confessed that it was Lily's idea to leave Eric alone at home, mirroring her own situation with her daughter. If it had only been me hurt by David's actions, I might have considered giving him another chance. But now it was a matter of my child's safety and upbringing. I couldn't raise Eric with a father who would bribe him into lying. After enduring so much pain, I was determined to get a divorce. It wasn't just a matter of days or months. David had betrayed my trust for years, yet I had never doubted his loyalty. I couldn't forgive him for breaking that trust. I refused any settlement other than divorce. My father-in-law apologized for David's actions and supported me throughout this ordeal. The news of David's affair and our divorce spread like wildfire throughout the office, leading to gossip and speculation. Unable to bear the shame, my father-in-law removed David and Lily from the company. He took charge again for a few years before selling the company to another businessman for a substantial sum. David's name was removed from his parents' will, and instead, Eric inherited his grandfather's legacy. David was disowned by his parents as he had shattered their trust too. David relocated to another part of the city where he faced judgment from the community for his infidelity with his assistant. Meanwhile, I transferred to a different department where I didn't have to travel as much. This allowed me to balance my work and home life more effectively. I hired a full-time nanny to care for Eric, ensuring he received the attention and care he deserved. I'm considering leaving my job in a few years. I've saved enough for my retirement and want to enjoy life to the fullest with my son. My greatest wish is for Eric to grow up into an educated and responsible individual, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure he receives